Hey garden friends, welcome on back to Flower Patch. Today we're going to talk about bloom booster fertilizers. What are they and do you really need them? So let's get chatting. All right, while we're doing this or talking about this, I'm going to repot this amaryllis that I just dug out of the basement and I had let it go to dormant. Anyways, I'm re-putting it back in the same pot. So let's talk about bloom boosters. So now, have you seen those fertilizer, I don't even know, ads or even the front of the packaging that claims they are to supercharge blooming? Those are called bloom boosters, and they're advertised to increase the blooming of your flowers out in your garden or in your pots. So are they really all they're cracked up to be? We're going to kind of examine that today while I do this and talk about. I need a little more in there. If they really do the job. So they're specifically marketed for that they claim to increase flower production. And they come, fertilizers have that NPK on it, the ratios. And N nitrogen, P phosphorus, K potassium. And the bloom boosters have added or a higher number of the P phosphorus. And that's what is supposedly going to have your flowers produce extra or more flowers than if you didn't give them, or if you just gave them a more balanced, like a 3:12 is what is considered the ratio, NPK ratio. 3:12 is the perfect balanced fertilizer for all plants. And so these ones will have a huger or much bigger middle number. Now I don't have it right in front of me, but some will have like 9, 30, 10 or something like that, where the middle number is really a lot higher than the other two. So as I said, they supposedly feel that will increase the blooms. But what's the facts? Well, does phosphorus really mean more flowers? Now, while phosphorus is essential for plant growth, its influence on flower production is not as dramatic as the marketing for the bloom boosters, what they claim. So lack of phosphorus is noted by stunted plant growth, delayed flowering. Adding phosphorus to nutrient deficient soil can help with plant health. Remember, a healthy plant will bloom its heart out, not just adding more phosphorus to an already healthy soil that you may have taken years to amend, or if you're just starting to amend. Here's the key. Most soils contain more than enough phosphorus for plants to thrive, and this includes flowering and fruiting types. Phosphorus moves through the soil slowly. So that fertilizer, what I said, so a fertilizer that is 3:1 or 3:12 NPK ratio is more than sufficient. So it's basically a fertilizer that one size will fit all. You don't have to buy a specialty fertilizer for roses, your vegetable garden, your flowering plants. You just need a fertilizer that has a good ratio, and that is 3:1 or 3:12. So the key is providing what is needed and no more. Bombarding them with high doses of phosphorus is not going to lead to the mother lode of flowers. It's not. This actually came from my blog post, so if you wanted to read this too. So what's the harm? That's just it. There's always a caveat. So all of the nutrients are necessary, but if you have one that's too high, it will create an imbalance with the other nutrients. So this could lead to a deficiency in elements like iron, calcium, and magnesium. So the excess phosphorus can block the plant's ability to uptake those other trace elements. So have you ever added chelated iron for chlorosis? You may have plenty of iron in your soil, but if you have too much phosphorus, your plant can't take it up. So there you see what the problem could be. really is just adding too much of one thing can create other problems. And then you add something else to combat that problem, and it's a vicious cycle. So phosphorus moves slowly through the soil, but if there's too much of it, it can leach out and get into the water systems. And that contributes to the pollution of lakes and streams. So that's something you don't, we have a pond, it's not ours, but it's next to a winery. It gets too much phosphorus, and you can see the problem that has been created. So here's a quote from the United States Geological Survey. Phosphorus is an essential nutrient for plants and animals. However, excessive phosphorus in surface water can cause explosive growth of aquatic plants and algae. This can lead to a variety of water quality problems, including low dissolved oxygen concentration, which can kill fish and harm other aquatic life. And that's what this pond, it has an excess. It has that, well, it was called killer algae. And yeah, and that was from the too much phosphorus. And it's running off from gardens. I was going to say, I did a blog post and probably a video on the #1 mistake home gardeners make, and that's the over addition of these type of nutrients. Farmers and whatever, because fertilizers are so expensive, they're very judicious in their use of them. And the main problem is home gardeners. They cave into all the marketing for all these fancy fertilizers that are unnecessary, and they think it's going to improve their gardens and whatever, and all they're really doing is over fertilizing, and it runs off and creates pollution. So nature's own bloom booster, keeping your soil healthy by composting and regenerative practices can go far. That's where, like when I do the chop and drop, when I'm deadheading or cutting plants back, I cut them into small increments, let it fall to the soil. That regenerates the soil. It's feeding the plants. And let's see, regenerating the soil is the first step in the healthiest garden. This in turn promotes healthier plants that can combat diseases and pest pressures easily. So you won't have to use any kind of pesticides either. And the #1 reason pests are attracted to many of your plants is the lush growth from over-fertilization. They say, ooh, this is an easy one to tap into, and they will flock to it. They're flying overhead, and if the bricks level, it's a whole nother subject, is too high or too low, they can sense it, and that this will make the perfect meal, and they'll come down and attack your plants. If the bricks level is at an optimum level, they will ignore it, because many times they can then, because of the level in your plant, it will not be able to digest the carbohydrates that it gets from sucking on your plant. So that's just a word to the wise about not over-fertilizing. Keep it in balance. So even the overuse of compost or animal manure can create the problem. It can create a high phosphorus problem. So seaweed extract is a good source of micronutrients, amino acids, and natural plant hormones. And hormones, they play a significant part in flowering. And they can aid in flower production and increase plant resistance to stress without adding excess phosphorus. So, how do you increase flowering? Well, power of deadheading. As your flowers are fading away, deadhead them. Many of them will promote more flowering, and you don't need to keep, if your soil is well fed, you will not need to keep pouring on more and more fertilizers. You just, many natural gardens, they add their compost as a mulch early in the season, and that acts as a slow release fertilizer. Mulch is also good. It also breaks down slowly feeds the soil, the microbes in the soil, which then in turn feed the plants. And by the way, microbes know exactly the amount of plant food that your plants need. So let them feed your plants. You feed the soil. And I just did a blog post and video not too long ago. I will link it. And it's about the benefits of ground covers. They help improve the soil even more than adding mulch. And that's a neat thing. So when you deadhead, removing the spent blooms, this allows the plant to channel its energy into more buds. Now, plants are engineered to do this because if you don't let them go to seed, then they think, oh, wow, we've got to produce more seed so that we can propagate ourselves. And that's just how nature does it. So grab your pruners, skip the bloom booster. So timing. Now this also has a bearing on flowering, and this is important. While fertile soil and pruning can play a role, it's important to remember that many flowering plants are regulated by photoperiod. Photoperiod is the length of time the plants are exposed to light, so day length. Some plants bloom in response to specific day lengths, while others rely on factors like temperature and weather. So all of those have a factor. You can force feed a plant that only blooms during a certain time period because of certain light conditions all you want, and it's not going to improve the blooming. So spring bulbs, they need a period of cold to be able to bloom well. Other plants too, they need vernalization these are perennials, to bloom well. And that's why some plants don't do well in higher zones, because they don't get that cool period in the winter that they need to bloom well. Understanding the natural flowering patterns of plants and giving them the right growing conditions can do wonders in encouraging the best blooms. So related, I have a blog post on bone meal, adding bone meal to your garden and what can the harm be. So go, and I don't know if I have a video on that one, I may, and I'll link both of them if I know I have a blog post. So what about containers or pots? We all know that nutrients leach faster out of pots because you're watering them more. So it keeps the soil moist, but it can deprive the soil of the nutrients. So still, you only want to use a fertilizer that has the 3-2-1 or 3-1-2 ratio. Because that's the proper amount of phosphorus compared to the potassium and nitrogen that it needs. You don't need to up the phosphorus level. So if you nurture your plants with the proper feed, healthy soil, proper pruning, and the right growing conditions, you will be rewarded with flourishing plants. Flourishing plants will produce a lot of flowers. So if you want to use them, go right ahead. If you feel they benefit you, go right ahead. But for majority of people we're on a budget gardening, I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. So yeah. Now I use a liquid fertilizer that is made from food waste. It has so many ecological benefits, not only taking the food waste out of the landfills and creating less problems there, but it also has the right ratio of nutrients and it feeds the soil. So the soil microbes then get fed. They can get the relationship going with the plants, feed the plants what they need, and it's all a win-win. And one fertilizer does it all. You don't have to buy all the different ones. You don't have to buy one for roses, one for your tomatoes, one for your wildflower, whatever. This will do it all. And the only thing I add additional fertilizer to in the summer months is my roses. Delphiniums too. Those are two food hogs, nutrient hogs. And because I plant a lot of plants close together, even beneath my roses, I will supplement their feed. The rest of my plants, unless they're in containers, my composting and mulching does the job. So here's to saving money in the garden. Let's garden the old-fashioned way, the way our grandparents did, and they grew beautifully without all this marketing and specialty things off the nursery shelves or the, garden center shelves that you really don't need. That's all that is. It's marketing and to get you grow. And I wanted to add in here about adding Epsom salt. I do have a video on that. I have a blog post on that, and it tells you why you do not or should not be putting Epsom salt on your plants. My garden shows evidence of heavy magnesium already, and if I was to do that, it would do the same as adding too much phosphorus. Deprive the plants of the other nutrients that it really needs because of the imbalance in the soil. So, only is it very rare that you would need to add magnesium. the Epsom salt to your garden. So leaving on that note, I will link everything I've talked about below. If I forget something, please tell me. So I will see you in my next video.